All right, we'll call to order. It is 10:02. We do have a quorum present. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice for all.
All right, we need a motion to accept or amend the staff report.
I'll make a motion to accept the staff report as presented.
Okay, we got a motion to accept the staff report. Do we have a second?
I will second that.
All right, we have a second, a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion carries. I need them. Everyone had a chance to look over the minutes. Does anybody have any corrections for the minutes? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes for the July 10th meeting.
I'll make the motion. We approve the minutes for the July meeting for the public P and Z.
I'll second that.
All right. We got a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. All right, we'll go into the communications. Cassidy.
All right, thank you. So last Board of County Commissioners meeting at July 16th, 2024, we did have two variance applications that were approved, as well as conditional use permit for a 120-foot cell tower and certification of language amendments for sections 5F, 5G, and 21.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just a point of clarification. So you're going to see on the agenda for the Board of County Commissioners, there are two resolutions that are being amended. When the recommendation that came out, there was a condition on both variances that went through. That condition was not included into the resolution. When they did make a motion to approve both of those first two hearings on those variances, they did include in their verbal the conditions that the Planning and Zoning Commission did put on there. So I just want to let you know that you're going to see on the agenda that there are two amended resolutions, and that's what it's for, is to include the conditions that the Planning and Zoning Commission put on there. So just so you know, just for your point of clarification. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Cassidy. We'll go into the public hearings now. We'll open up public hearing number 1 for LR Communications. Turn the time over to Cassidy.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the first application today is LR Communications. The applicant property owner is Sweetwater County. The legal description is that this is an aliquot part of Section 31, Township 20 North, Range 104 West in Sweetwater County, and it is currently zoned for agricultural use. Infrastructure includes Rocky Mountain Power and Fire District Number 1 response area. So here we do have a zoning map of the area, and you can see that there's a mix of zoning in this particular area. There's some residential, commercial, agricultural use. And where this actually is Reliance County Park. So you can see that the piece of land that LR Communications is leasing is this 50 by 50 foot square kind of at the bottom corner of that parkland. So the location will be used as a telecommunications site and will feature a temporary mobile tower. And then later there will be a 50-foot steel lattice tower founded in concrete base. And the site will have a 100 square foot equipment shelter and will be fenced and gated to reduce or prevent public access. So the plan is that upon approval of the conditional use permit, LR will replace the cow on site and with that 50-foot permanent tower at a later date. And just another thing to note here is that a MOU has been established between LR Communications and Sweetwater County for the lease of this property. Here we have our site photos. So you can see July 16th, 2024, this was posted, public notice was posted. And you can see our view from the north, south, east, and west for the site location. And that'll bring us over to the conditional use permit review criteria that we look into. So there are 9 things that we look at. And the first is that the request is consistent with all applicable provisions of the comprehensive plan. And staff finds that it is, according to LR Communications, they say that the cell tower will provide improved access to options for high-speed internet. And this is an area that they state 90% of their customers are underserved in. So we see that that would encourage, growth and development to continue in an orderly manner and in locations that contribute to the economic and social well-being of county residents. Second criteria that we look at is that it shall not adversely affect adjacent properties. So the proposed tower will be 50 feet and the fall zone won't cross any property boundaries if that tower were to fall. So it far exceeds any setback requirements that we have there. And then they're also planning to fence in this facility again to prevent any public access. So we don't see any negative effects on adjacent properties. Third is that the request is compatible with the existing or allowable uses of adjacent properties. This particular property is zoned for agricultural use. The surrounding properties are for residential and commercial uses. And the use of a cell tower on any of those properties would also be conditionally allowed. So because they're within that growth management area. So because this is a use that would be allowed in all 3 of those zones, we do see that as compatible. The request, so for 4 and 5, the request can demonstrate adequate facilities and adequate provisions for maintenance and use of associate structures. We do find that it will, there's adequate access to the site. And then also LR will be working, a power right-of-way easement is requested. They may not have it implemented right away immediately, but they will need the AC power upon construction of the permanent site. So when they have the cow on site, the temporary tower, they won't need that because it runs on solar panels. But for the main tower, the permanent one, they will need that to work with Rocky Mountain Power to make sure that that need is met. 6, the request has minimized to the greatest degree possible adverse effects on the natural environment. There's no maximum height restriction on structures in this zone, and we don't anticipate there to be any adverse effects on the natural environment. We also don't see that there will be any undue traffic congestion. This is an unmanned site, and so that should have an impact on traffic. For number 8, the request will not adversely affect the public health, safety, or welfare. Staff is not seeing any evidence that it will. There will be no additional generated noise, traffic, or vibrations from the tower. And again, it will be fenced off. And then for our last review criteria, the request conforms to all applicable provisions of this resolution. The project meets minimum setback requirements and there's no height restrictions here. So staff does find that the request will conform to the provisions of the resolution if the conditional use permit is approved. We did receive 2 public comment or agency comments. Mark Berry with Lumen says no conflict, and James Tardoni of Joint Powers Water Board said no comments. And with that, staff recommends approval of this conditional use permit for the communications on wheels, and then a 50-foot cell tower and 100-foot square foot equipment shelter, excuse me, with the following conditions. First, that the cow will be removed within 60 days of post-construction of the permanent 50-foot cell tower. Second, that the permanent 50-foot cell tower will be constructed within 2 years post conditional use permit approval. And third, that the conditional use permit applies exclusively to the proposed 50-foot cow, 50-foot cell tower, and 100-foot square foot equipment shelter. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Is the applicant or a representative here? If you can come forward and let us know who you are for the record.
My name is John Mock. I'm with LR Communications. I actually am the one who put together the proposal for the county as presented, and worked with the county staff for the MOU. And does anybody have questions about this project?
Open it up for questions. If you have questions for the applicant.
I'm glad to see you'll be operating that with solar panels, but is there ever the opportunity that you may have to use a generator to provide power for that, or will it just be solely solar?
It will just be solar as an initial plan. And then later on, when we build a permanent site, we'll work with Rocky Mountain Power to establish a right of way and bring AC power to the site. We do anticipate there's enough battery life that we'll have on board of our mobile communications platform that we shouldn't need to run a generator.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Does the commission have any initial comments on this before we open up public? All right, we will open it up to the public now. If anybody has anything they want, if they want to speak for it or against it, or just in general, now is the time. Okay. We will close the public portion of this hearing. Does the board have anything else they want to add? Okay, I'll entertain a motion then.
I'll make a motion to approve public hearing number 1, LR Communications conditional use permit, the communication tower with staff comments and recommendations.
Okay, we have a motion to approve with staff comments. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. All right, thank you. The motion carries 5-0. We'll move to public hearing number 2. Turn the time over to Cassidy.
All right, thank you. So today we do have Stephen Mars with Stouffer's Road Solutions attending virtually. So he is in the Zoom meet currently. But our applicant is Stouffer's Road Solutions, LLC. Property owner is Commercial Enterprises and Holding, LLC. Legal description is all of Lot 7 and the east 20 feet of Lot 8, Foothill Subdivision, or 32 Wilkins Peak Drive, Rock Springs. This area is, or this parcel is currently zoned for heavy industrial use and is also within the scenic slope overlay area. And infrastructure existing is Rocky Mountain Power, Dominion Energy, West Side Water and Sewer District for water and sewer, Fire District number 1 response area, and then Wilkins Peak Drive and US 191 South. So here's our zoning map. We can see that this is a industrial area. So adjacent properties are also zoned for heavy industrial use. And then a little bit farther away, there's also light industrial use. And then we've just got a picture of our site location here. So what's going on here is that Stouffer's Road Solutions was previously known as Stouffer's Towing and is requesting a conditional use permit application to operate a towing company at 32 Wilkins Peak Drive under their new name. So Stouffer's Road Solutions LLC and the property owner have already established a month-to-month lease agreement, and the applicant has been operating a towing business at this location for several years. The applicant is proposing to continue operating as previously proposed, and really, there should be no changes to that. While the property on Wilkins Peak Drive is zoned for impound storage and salvage, Stoffers Road Solutions LLC will not be salvaging vehicles under this permit. The towed and wrecked vehicles will be on the lot while awaiting insurance claim processing and vehicle relocation. The building that is currently on the property will be utilized for indoor parking and light maintenance of their company vehicles. So we can see site photos view from the north, south, east, and west, and then our public notice that was posted on July 16th, 2024 here. And we'll move into our conditional use permit review criteria. So the first one is that the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and the comprehensive plan states that one of the goals of the county is to identify and promote areas that are appropriately zoned and adequately serviced for industrial uses. And this is an area that industrial uses, are I guess this is a very heavily industrial district and is used this way. So we see this as being in alignment with the comprehensive plan. Second is that the request shall not adversely affect adjacent properties. So this vehicles will not be stacked on this property. The impound yard is not located within 600 feet of a church, school, or residential zoning district, or within 1 mile of a recreational facility. So we don't see any of that being an issue. One thing that we are going to be requiring as part of our conditions for this use permit is screening, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. But if that screening is, implemented, then we don't see an issue here. Third, the request is compatible with the existing or allowable uses of adjacent properties. And as you could see from the zoning map, it's all industrial there. And so this is, right in line with that. For review criteria 4 and 5, there's adequate access and utilities on the property. That should all be good. 6, the request has minimized to the greatest degree possible adverse effects on the natural environment. So the screening will be utilized to protect the scenic view shed of the area, and then also yearly inspections will be completed to ensure compliance. 7, the request will not create undue traffic congestion. Like I said, this property has been in operation for a number of years already, and we haven't seen issues with traffic congestion. And so the existing yard operated in the same manner as it has previously been will not create any traffic congestion issues. 8 is that the request will not adversely affect public health, safety, or welfare. And we don't see adverse effects to the public safety, health, welfare for the following reasons: just that the yard is operating in an appropriately zoned district, and also there will be no vehicle stacking on the property. So for number 9, we get a little bit more criteria that we look specifically at for impound salvage and storage yard for vehicles. So I've already spoken a little bit to the fact that it cannot be established within 600 feet of a church, school, or residential zoning district, and it is not. We'll have screening as part of our condition, and no stacking will be allowed. The business must be licensed with the state of Wyoming, which they are, and they will be providing that to the land use office. So we have that on record as well. And then just that the conditional use permit for this type of use for an impound salvage and storage yard is for 2 years. And then after that, a new application will be submitted, and conditional or subsequent conditional use permits can be termed for a period established by the board. So for this one, we had 3 agency comments. Mark Berry with Lumen says no conflict. West Side Sewer District has no objection to this request. And James Tardoni with Joint Powers Water Board also said no comments. And that brings me to the staff recommendations. So staff does recommend approval of the conditional use for an impound yard in accordance with our 2015 zoning resolution with the following conditions. So first is that this conditional use permit is personal to Stoffers Road Solutions LLC and runs concurrently with the State of Wyoming Vehicle Storage and Disposal Facility License. The applicant will submit a copy of the state license to the Sweetwater County Land Use Department annually. Second, the conditional use permit is valid for 2 years if the lease between the property owner and applicant is upheld. 3, no salvage and or stacking of vehicles is permissible on this property under this permit. 4, within 6 months of the conditional use permit approval, 100% permanent screening will be required on a portion of the fence at the front of the property, and 50% permanent screening will be required on a portion of the vest on the west side of the property, as depicted in red and blue on the attached map, which I will scroll to in just a moment. And then the 5th and final condition that we're proposing here is that annual inspections for compliance will be conducted by land use staff. So I do have site photo here. Eric and I went out on site and visited, and we saw that there were some wrecked vehicles at the very kind of front corner of the property that we'd asked that be removed and kind of out of that line of sight. The vehicles that you can see that are at the front of the property there are personal company vehicles. So they will be allowed to stay there. However, we would like to put screening up, but I did want to show that they were being compliant in moving those wrecked vehicles out of the way and then willing to work with us on some screening. So I do have a map here that kind of shows where we're proposing to have that screening. So the golden outline is the approximate property boundary, and it is fenced off. So the red area is where we're asking for 100% permanent screening. I don't know if this is showing up. Is it? Oh, okay, great. Thank you. So that's just the area. It'll screen off the front of the property, so we won't see so much of those company vehicles, and also the back of the yard where the building itself isn't providing a visual barrier. And then the blue on the west side is where we're proposing for there to be 50% permanent screening. And it'll just be from that corner of where the red is ending to basically to where the neighboring building is, because that neighboring building also provides screening. So really, when you come around the corner there at Wilkins Peak, you can see kind of into the side view where that blue is showing. And so we would like to kind of minimize that with some screening as well. All right. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So you said online is the applicant?
Yes.
All right, the applicant, please introduce themselves and. There we go.
Okay, sorry, I had to walk out of the office. My name is Stephen Mars with Stoffers Road Solutions. I am our business development manager. And we're keeping it the same, just as it was before, just switching the name from Stoffers Towing to Stoffers Road Solutions. I agree with everything that Kathy stated, along with the fencing. We did move some cars out of the way as requested. We're just happy to continue on.
All right, thank you. Does the commission have any questions for the applicant? All right. All right, thank you. So we will open this up to the public at this time. If there's anybody who wants to speak for, against, or in general, now is the time.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Even again, I want to make sure we are not a salvage. I just want to make sure. I think Kathy said it as well, but we don't stack cars. We don't salvage cars. We're just a straight towing company. We drop the cars off from like DUI arrest, accidents, and then the insurance or the owners come and get them. So we're definitely not a stacker or a salvage yard. I just want to put that on there. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
What's the longest saying accident cars are gonna be stored on the lot? How
We try to
long?
keep, that's the problem. So we try to keep everything 30 to about 30 days. The problem is nowadays is nobody has insurance. These big trucking companies don't have insurance anymore. They don't have enough to do it. Regular civilians, they don't have any insurance on cars. We're seeing that a lot now. About 50% of our calls in from the high patrol or local law enforcement are resulting in no insurance. Like I said, that even goes with semis. So what we do is after about 30 to 45 days, if nobody comes and actually picks up the cars or the unit, we have a huge piece of property in Lyman. That's our holding yard. So we will move everything out of like our Rollins yard and our Rock Springs yard. Everything goes to our Lyman yard, and then we start filing for liens and titles and that sort of thing. So the yards are 30 to 45 days at the most.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, there's no other public comment. We'll close the public portion of this hearing. Does the commission have any further questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a couple or one. When we go back historically, I mean, this is not gonna be a salvage, they're not gonna be parked cars and stuff, but we've had screening. And within this area, I mean, have had a lot of issues or discussions. How are we in our screening requirement of them? Because they are gonna be storing the cars. How is it comparable to what we have done to all our previous applicants? I'm just trying to see, are we in the same ballpark, or go back a couple years ago, we'd fought and rearranged and
Yes, as far as I know, this should be, it's right along with what has been required in the past in this area. It's pulled straight from the requirements that we have in our zoning resolution.
I'm trying to remember,
in-
I think we changed some stuff on the,
Oh, okay.
or altered some of that a while back too, to try to make it simpler.
And
You know, I just want to keep us consistent.
absolutely. In the past, I know for this specific property as well, there hasn't been screening on it just because they were proposing to store vehicles more in the back area where the building itself provides some of that, visual screening. But it's kind of come about where there have been vehicles in the front. So we just want to make sure that we're protecting that scenic overlay and not having that be an issue. Eric, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So when we're talking about in this subdivision, it's definitely been a site, it's been varied. So usually the front requires 100% screening. That's been pretty consistent that we've seen. So like if you take another impound yard that's in there, actually two, both of the requirements were 100% screening in the front. Then if you get into Reliance, I believe that that one also was also required to have 100% screening in the front. Then typically you get into the side of it, and just varies because depending on how visible it is from a road, sometimes the 50% is okay. I think on another one off Yellowstone Road, it was 100% in the front and then 50% on the sides. That way were the most visible from the road, that required 100% screening. So it depends per site. That's kind of how it's gone. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
I got a question. Have you talked to the adjacent property owners? I mean, what are their thoughts on, because I'm looking at the yard itself, and you look to I guess would be to the east, the property there, and it's fairly clean. I mean, do they have any concerns with a storage yard there about having that fenced?
So they were sent communication. They received a comment form from our office, and we didn't hear anything back from them. They haven't stated any concerns to us. So as far as we know, they're there are not concerns about this from adjacent property owners.
Okay, so, but they've had a ample opportunity to comment on it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Because I'm assuming that's why you brought the blue line on the property to the west, I guess. That would be, they requested that, or is that from you guys? They requested that fence being slatted, or was that from the county?
So that would be from us, just because as you round that, there's sort of a curve there. And so as you go around it, you can, there's some visibility into the side and back of the property. So that's to screen the view from the road mostly.
Okay, that was all.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the commission? With that, I'll entertain a motion for public hearing number 2.
I'll make a motion that we accept public hearing number 2, Stafford Road Solutions LLC, conditional use permit with staff recommendations.
I have a motion.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second to approve the conditional use permit with staff recommendations. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. All right, motion is approved, 5-0. All right, we'll move on to public hearing number 3.
Okay, are we able to pull that up on the screen?
Do I need to?
Oh, here, actually, if you just hand me that cord.
Was there a second ago?
Do I need to have this whole thing? Oh, you've got it. Got it. I've got it. Okay. Hopefully it'll come up there. If not,
Yes, Stephen, you're okay to leave the meeting. Thank you for joining us today.
okay, there we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we're proposing some language amendments to help clarify different housing types. As we were going through, and we did make some some changes to setbacks and such, and staff brought up to me some of the concerns they had as far as some of the definitions and bringing them to more current definitions and such that you see in other zoning resolutions. So really what you're going to see here today is just more of clarification, that so everything is working cohesively together. So one thing, you want to see if I can increase the size of this. So the first section that we went into to help, there's been a lot of confusion on this, and just to help clarify on accessory structures, what this does is addresses the some of the issues you have with barndominiums. We do allow them in the county, not an issue there. We do not have residential code, so international residential code, just the fire code. So the biggest thing with those is to make sure that, again, this doesn't change the requirement. This just more clarifies that the accessory use can exceed the square footage of the dwelling, the single family dwelling unit. And so what this first one does is just help clarify it, and number 3 is more for any type of structure, whether it's commercial, industrial, that you don't have 50% of gross floor areas exceeding gross floor areas of accessory uses, which tends to not be an issue in commercial or industrial. But what number 4 does is it goes in there and further clarifies it, basically that you can't exceed the square footage of the dwelling unit to square footage of the accessory use. So that's current. It's just more helping staff. There was some confusion, and so this just helps clarify those questions as when staff goes in. Any questions on that, Mr. Chairman?
Any questions from the commission?
I have one, Eric. Is it on
Yeah.
total square footage of a unit or just on the surface square footage?
So it's wall to wall inside so when you're looking at a floor plan, it's
So if you're looking at like a second story or basement.
Yeah, so let's say the whole second story, it's just all that's gotta be living space up there, it doesn't, whether it's an open living room, studio, whatever it may be, we don't care about that. It's just that
Right.
it has to meet that dwelling unit requirements. So a location for habitation, sanitation, cooking, things like that. Very, very basic. Again, since we don't have residential code,
Right.
it's very, very open and basic. So,
Okay.
and the big thing there is with the fire code does come into play. So if you, let's say, just use a basic example of that dwelling unit being on that second level. And let's say you want to use a space entirely underneath for a shop, you can. You just have to have that fire separation between the two, whether it's 1 or 2 hour firewall.
Okay.
So, any other questions on that? No? Okay. Okay, and so we're going to get into the definitions of this. So when we get into the use charts that you see up there, there is a difference between it, and I'm going to go in and explain these in the definitions, but single family detached, and then you have a single family attached, and then a two family detached structure, which is like your duplexes. Okay, so when you go on a property, you can even buy these now modular duplexes. I don't know if you've seen these, but you just lay that foundation on. But the duplex is basically so, and we allow these right now in our R2 zone district where you can put this duplex unit on, let's say, a 1 acre parcel. You can rent the other side. That's not an issue, but it's just allowing what's already there. This further helps define, because there was a little bit of confusion of, well, if you have an attached structure and then you have a property line going through it, isn't that a duplex? And no, that is a single family attached. So let's start with the first. Single family detached, that's just you've got a 1 acre lot and you got a home on it. That's a detached structure, right? So it doesn't have any other structure another dwelling unit attached to it. So then your single family attached is what we are allowing now, which is your 4,000 square foot lot. Then you've got, what's 8,000 in total, but you'll have a property line going through that structure. And really the way it is they are they are considered actually two single family, but just that they're attached to each other now. So that's what your single family attached is. Basically, it has a property line through the middle of it.
The common wall.
With a common wall, exactly. And you get those in duplexes too. But this is, right, you probably have a 1 or 2 hour fire rated wall that goes from the foundation all the way through the roof. And that is what your single family attached structure is. Then your two family dwelling unit is more of for structures that are on a 1 acre lot and you've got two family dwelling units on it, your typical duplex type unit. So really it's not changing anything here. It's just defining it, bringing it into modern terms, because there's a little bit of confusing staff had. Well, what's a townhome? And that's basically going to be your single family attached structure would be more your townhome. Any questions on that? And I'll get into the definitions to hopefully clarify that a little bit. Okay, so let's get to down. So you go to the next, where all our setbacks are. This is just changing the terminology in there. Nothing really. So it's changing it to single family attached, detached, and such. So all our terms are matching. Doing the same in our parking regulations, just making that terminology change there. Okay, then we get to the definitions and accessory dwelling unit on section 21. We're basically moving that in the definition, so we're not really changing that. So I'll get down to where the definitions are. Okay. Okay. So this is kind of help organizing the definitions better. So staff or the public wants to look up, okay, what are dwelling units? They're all now in the same area, so they don't have to jump all over the definition section where you had accessory dwelling unit up at the top, and then you had single family dwelling unit, in the S's. So this puts everything together. So accessory dwelling unit, this has not changed at all. This is exactly what we had as far as the definition. It's just moving it. So now it's just dwelling unit accessory instead of accessory dwelling unit. And then dwelling multifamily, building containing 3 or more dwelling units, including units that are located over the other on one lot or parcel. So that's like, could be your apartment complex. The dwelling single family attached, this is 2 dwelling units with a common wall. Casey, I believe that's what you brought up. So there's that common wall between the units on a separate lot or parcels, more commonly known as townhomes. Okay, so that's bringing in the townhome. And then a dwelling single family detached is a single detached structure having but one dwelling unit designed for use exclusively for residential purposes by one family on one lot or parcel. And then, whoops. Dwelling two family attached, 2 dwelling units with a common wall with the units. I'll go to the other page on one lot or parcel, most commonly known as a duplex. So we got rid of single family dwelling and the 2 family dwelling. And like I said, that's really it, Mr. Chairman. So it's really not changing requirements. It's just helping define it better. And it actually makes us more consistent with both cities adjacent within the county, Rock Springs and Green River. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Very straightforward.
All right, thank you. Does the commission have any questions or comments?
Just one comment. Thanks for grouping those together.
Yeah, exactly.
I've had to do some documents where I've had to search around for a few things. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely appreciated. All right, any other questions or comments?
No.
All right, we'll open it up to the public. If there's anyone wishing to speak for or against or in general. No surprise since it's an empty room. We'll close public comment. All right, any further comments or questions from the commission? If not, I'd entertain a motion for public hearing number 3.
I'll make a motion for public hearing number 3. We approve the changes, language amendment.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I got a motion and a second to approve the language amendment, public hearing number 3. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right, motion carries 5-0. All right. That's the end of our public hearings. For other business, we do have commissioner training.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So we're just, whoops, let's see, here we go. I can share my screen again. Yeah, I guess this won't. Completely locked up. Hold on.
Cassidy's breaking all sorts of stuff over there today, isn't she?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, if we take a 5-minute break, I'll get it fixed.
Okay, yeah, we'll take a 5-minute recess.
Don't know what happened there.
All right, yeah, we'll, back from recess, ready to go. We'll, turn the time over to you, Eric.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is just a basic zoning 101 and
Excuse me, can we close that door so I don't have to hear that?
yeah,
I can barely hear, I do wear hearing
Coming
aids. I'm old.
We're doing some maintenance at the front entry.
oh, gotcha. Okay.
Thank you.
Something.
Yeah, much better. So this is basic zoning 101. It's been a while since we've gone over this, so we have a new planning and zoning member. So I thought I would run through this. And just so you know, I don't have these statutes up, but we'll basically the power to have a planning and zoning commission comes from Wyoming statute Title 18. And so that's as long as you have a zoning resolution, you're authorized to have a planning and zoning board under the Board of County Commissioners, which are who appoints. We need at least 3 people from the unincorporated areas of Sweetwater County in order to serve on a planning and zoning commission. That's by statute, which we have John, Mark, and Kelly are our 3 unincorporated areas. And then Rob and Casey are both in the cities. So let's talk about the Z word, which is zoning. It basically straightforward what the purpose of it is: protection of health, safety, and welfare. That's the biggest thing that we're concerned with by regulating land uses, controlling type, size, and height. It separates incompatible land uses, prevents new development from interfering with existing uses, and preserves character of community. So a little bit of the history, you'll hear this in, it's part of when you go to the American Planning Association. This was the first zoning resolution, which was in 1916. It was in New York City, and it was based on a building. It's actually called the Equitable Building. It was a 40-story, 1.2 million square foot office space building, which kind of drove the zoning. What was happening was they were allowing, one of the things that purpose of zoning is to prevent overcrowding of structures and sunlight and things like that. If you get into a big city, and especially when you're in a downtown area like New York City, sometimes you don't see daylight. You don't see that sun. It can be blocked by shadows. And that's what happened with this Equitable building that went up. And they're, without zoning, they had no way of preventing it. And it blocked a lot of sunlight from adjacent users and such. So they established height requirements, which was the first thing in the city of New York, and adopting that zoning. There was another key legal case, a 60-acre owned by Amber Realty. The town of Euclid passed a zoning ordinance, and Amber Realty, a realty company, sued. Was prevented. Well, they had a zoning map which was based in 1922. It established zoning districts, and Amber property was zoned residential. Amber sued the town of Euclid, went to the Supreme Court. The biggest thing that came out of that was zoning was a reasonable exercise of local police powers, as long as it benefits public welfare. And it's a form of nuisance control, and it also did not violate the Constitution, the 14th Amendment. So very key case, and you're going to see them throughout the years, different cases. We have, these yearly, whoops. Did I just lose it? Oh, there we go. You'll see these yearly cases. So the town of Euclid established Euclidean zoning, and I'll show you that's exactly what we have in Sweetwater County, and in probably a large percentage of anywhere that has zoning usually has this Euclidean style type zoning. And what that means is it's single use zoning, meaning as you look just as an example on this map north of Rock Springs, you'll see that blue area, R2SF zoning. So what it means is it'll have this, hey, this is the zoning classification, which is like R2SF, that green is agriculture, and it'll have a list of uses within that. And that's typically where you see that in Green River, you see it in Rock Springs, you see it in most all of the different cities and towns and counties in the United States that have zoning, usually have this style of zoning. So what does it do? it separates uses out, right? So if you have a heavy industrial zone district that allows a refinery, it'll keep it out of an area like a residential area, because that R2SF zoning, that residential like that blue, will not allow that. So that's what Euclidean style zoning is. That it comes from back that case that I just showed you, that Supreme Court, the town of Euclid, Ohio, that had established these different zoning districts. And it's very current and what you have in most of the United States. There are some, of course, there's pros and cons to everything. The pros are it separates incompatible uses. Some of the cons is it's not flexible. It doesn't allow a lot of flexibility. Those are the uses that are allowed, and that's it. Unless you have like special use permits, which you guys have seen today, which we had a special use permit, which was an impound and salvage yard. So sometimes those are allowed in certain zoning districts. But so here's some additional things. Pros are it's very specific uses. So as far as the public pulling up something and seeing what's allowed in their zoning district, very easy to implement and enforce. It's not very, there is a little bit of subjectivity, but it's pretty objective. This is what's allowed. It also gives predictable land use. Just like I said, it can create inflexibility. It can stifle creative development. We'll get into some other type of zoning that you can have that'll actually produce actually more creative development. It encourages some sprawl development and it impedes development of mixed uses. So like I said, especially when you specify those uses, sometimes it can impede those mixed type of developments where you see, I don't know, you can say like in, when you get into the bigger cities and such, where you'll see mixed zoning, where you'll see, I think Gateway is a good example of that. When you get down into Salt Lake City, if you go into that mall, you ever notice when you go down there, you'll have all those retail shops and everything, and then you'll have residential development directly above it. And so that's a mixed use. You'll have commercial development, and you'll actually see that. I've seen it up in Jackson where some of those industrial, I don't know if you want to call them industrial buildings, like as you're coming in, and they'll actually put apartments on top of those manufacturing type businesses and such, they'll have them on top. So that's also mixed use. So zoning in Sweetwater County, 1968 was our first zoning resolution and county resolution. And then we did some readoptions in 1979. There were, again, these are just readoptions. Of course, we've done many, many amendments, and our entire county is zoned, including federal and non-federal land. And then in 2000, actually it's 2015, we had readopted the zoning resolution. So there is a difference between comprehensive planning and zoning. So we have a comprehensive plan that is not a regulatory document, but it's a guide in vision and policy. When Cassidy was going over one of the, I believe it was one of the conditional use permits today, she brings in that comprehensive plan. One of the comprehensive plan goals, take for example, is separation of incompatible uses. So then you establish a zoning as a tool to implement that by creating zoning districts, just as an example. Regulatory processes heard. So the Planning and Zoning Commission hears conditional use permits or special use permits, zone map amendments and subdivisions, potential tools. We'll go over a little bit of what a floating zone is. What it does is it's kind of like an overlay district. We have some of those in the county where you'll allow, whether you'll have minimum district size. Sometimes you'll want larger lots. So you put a floating zone district, which is usually an overlay district. Form-based codes are very different. You typically see these in, let's just say, take Park City, for example, where you're not actually regulating the actual use, but regulating the form, so the building form. So usually you'll have architectural standards. So that's very common in Jackson and in Park City, where you'll go in and all the buildings look the same, whether it's Burger King or McDonald's. It fits in and blends in. They have actual architectural requirements. Typically with form, there's no counties or cities that I am aware of that have form-based codes in Wyoming. It's just something you'll typically see in other areas where you're not regulating that use type, but more the form of it.
I think Jackson.
Jackson might, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's so interesting. And here actually is an example of a salvage and impound yard, and I won't go over this because you just went over, it, but there's that review criteria. Just take, for example, that you went over today. This is a picture of that location of, actually it's not very far from the location of where you had that today, the conditional use. Won't go over this, but just comprehensive goal, encourage industrial development adjacent to existing industry. That's why you see, we would like to see that, when someone is just take, for example, asking for an impound and salvage yard, that they locate in like an area like a heavy industrial zone district. Not adversely affecting adjacent property. These are things to look at when, existing industrial uses. How is it affecting traffic, noise, views, lighting, hazardous material storage, similar uses in the area, surrounding land uses and zoning. And again, there's that public health, safety, and welfare. Adequate facilities, does it have power, gas, water, sewer, phone, fire protection is a big one, proper drainage, And then mitigation measures, some of the things that, especially when you go down 191, Bunning Pipe Yard, props to them. You go down 191, look at that giant wooden fence as you go down, which helps create that visual break between that scenic highway and their pipe yard. They, buffers, you can increase setbacks, noise restrictions, hours of operation. Those are things that you can put as conditions on a permit, to address concerns, dust control, bonding of improvements, building colors. Here's a good example of a site that's on Laos Drive, where they are in a scenic overlay and they blended in the colors of the building in with the surrounding area. Zoning map amendment, these are things that we look at. Is it consistent with our comprehensive plan? Is it suitable for the existing topography? Does it create buildable lots, the area? Is it on the side of a cliff? Does that make sense for a heavy industrial zone district? Is there adequate public facilities? Is there fire protection? And does not adversely affect those adjacent property owners and conforms to all the provisions of the code, like minimum district size. Zone map amendments consistent with the comprehensive plan. Again, here's a zone change just north of Rock Springs. Those are the things we looked at. We have to post. That's why you see, as per the actually Wyoming statute, that's why we do put public notices up and we do stick them out on properties, just to make sure that they are, the public is aware of them. We do notify adjacent property owners. This is just an example. We actually had someone that was proposing a zone change. This is out by Superior. Notice one thing, that is in the middle of the lot, that drainage. So very limiting factor. Now that zoning is heavy industrial, but the purpose of the zoning was to provide for a billboard. So you can use that property for billboard, sure, that's fine. It's right adjacent. This is right adjacent to the interstate. So that's why we made a change in our zoning code, so that you didn't have to just go out and do zone changes for billboards. You can do a conditional use in ag. So that could have stayed as ag, and then you could allow it by a special use permit, that billboard. So just some things that we changed so you didn't always have to go through a zone change. It's by Wyoming statute, you have to be on a heavy or industrial or commercial to put up a billboard. So, or special use permit. Subdivisions, there's a lot of things. I know Casey and Rob have been through a subdivision process and understand some things that, and just so you know, Megan is working on those subdivision regulations. So in case I get asked that question. So well, we are working on it, but we got to look at big thing is drainage in those and roadways and surveying and such, and just making sure that they make buildable lots and such. You know, like so there's just some things, not going to really go into that. Let's move over that. This is our growth management boundary. You'll hear this in some hearings and such, that there are more restrictive requirements when you're within these boundaries due to, you know, being located near those population centers like Rock Springs and Green River. You know, we don't allow wind turbine projects within the growth management boundary. That's one restriction. Nor do we allow solar farms within there. Oil and gas is not allowed within those boundaries. You know, so they protect those areas near north of Rock Springs and such. And then Green River. This also puts requirements on, if you're building a subdivision within there, you got to put water and sewer in. You know, we don't want these high density areas, and we've seen some issues. We don't want to repeat it over and over again where wells can dry up and such. That public water does make sense. You know, we've looked at potentially reducing those boundaries, especially like when you see out by the airport south of that, seems like an awfully big area. Again, this document's always up for making those changes, but this is the way the current area boundary is. There's a little bit. Then those scenic overlays that you see between Green River and Rock Springs, you can see a lot of that hatched area there that has special requirements as you're driving in, that you make sure you have, you know, earth tone colors and such on the buildings and such. Yeah, public road requirements are required in the growth management area. Building colors, that's why you see you'll see earth tone colors in the scenic overlays. There's that fence. Screening required for outside storage. So that's the budding pipe here, but as you can see, as you're looking towards White Mountain, there's that screen fence. Nice solid fence that helps screen that from that scenic 191. Landscaping is encouraged, not required. This needs work. This transportation plan, I'm just gonna leave it at that. The green, just so you know, that's our arterial roads. Those are constructed, but the areas that definitely need work, especially north of Rock Springs there, you know, they basically followed quarter section lines, and is where they drew those in. I think what we need to do is make sure those are realistic. I don't think those are all realistic in there, but I think it's good to have a transportation plan. That way you're planning routes, but we definitely need to go in there and actually create routes that are realistic and such. And we do, this is the old map, and there's been a lot of modifications through the years, but one of our goals is to get this map updated.
Does your bike path fall within that?
Is that what that is? Kind of looks like that. It does, doesn't it? It's a collector route. I do find that interesting. You're right, though. There is a division line, as you can see, that dotted line in the middle, and that separates both the Green River side of things and Rock Springs. So that's that form-based zoning I was talking about, just as, you know, as an example. You know, you get into the whole thing when you go into some of these conferences, walkable streets, you know, creative streets and complete streets and things like that is terminology that you'll hear, where it adds in kind of a sociology in the whole thing of how people interact with their environment. Such gets pretty deep. Okay. So this is old. This is 2015, but just so you know, some of the current projects we're working on, subdivision regulations, high priority here. I think the other things that I'm working on right now is a supplemental use regulation section, which will address telecommunication regulations. That needs to be addressed. You know, they're in there as a use, but we need consistency across the board when we're dealing with these. And so there's that section. Another thing is we do not have RV campground standards. I think Gillette or Campbell County has done a really good job on that, especially with some of these big projects coming in. Before that gets away from us, I think that's another use to look at. And then just trying to think of some other ones, but those are the big top priority ones right now, just to get those dealt with immediately. I think as far as an organization standpoint of the code, once we get going in that supplemental use section, we can consolidate a lot of those areas, deal with the GMA stuff. That's one of my goals before I retire, is to get that thing blended into the zoning code so we don't have two books that the planners are having to go in and make sure, that it just all flows together. That was never done. I'm fine with keeping the subdivision regulations separate. That's fine. But that needs to be dealt with, transportation plan and such. So, but any questions, Mr. Chairman, planning and zoning commission members?
I have one question, since John, he wasn't privy to the BLM. Have they made a decision? I mean, that will affect us.
Yes. So, Mr. Chairman, I sat in a cooperators meeting last week. I can't talk about it. Those are confidential. All I can tell you is it will be published here in August. So I was just going to leave.
August? I was going to say.
So in August, yeah, it's coming very soon. And I'm going to leave it at that. And then the sage grouse plan is also will be coming behind that. Keep in mind, the Rock Springs field office is doing the Rock Springs RMP, and then the sage grouse is a national plan, but will affect the RMP also. So emphasize that, because you'll have the restrictions of the RMP, but you'll also have the restrictions of the sage grouse. So that'll overlay on top of the RMP also, in the maps and such. It kind of like an amendment is how it'll operate. There's some other but yeah, just to answer your question, that's coming out very soon. And what that will initiate is a 30-day protest period, 60-day governor compliance review. And so it's very fast, and we'll be very busy. The governor's office has reached out to us also, offer any resources and such. So that's all I can tell you. I've had the press reach out to me too. You'll know soon enough.
How about Middle Baxter?
Status of it?
Is that
It's
off
dead.
the plate?
It's dead. The issue with that is it's too much money. It's, the partners we wanted involved with that are not interested in getting stuff out there, as far as what I've heard. Always the door's open for that discussion. I think, just so you know, and just to kind of discuss that, and Kayla knows a lot about this. Kayla is actually working with a consultant right now. They're called Insight Consulting, and they are a site selector business that works on, we were not chosen in the first round. Sweetwater County was not. They're working with the Wyoming Business Council right now. What they do is they offer feedback on site. So when site selectors are coming in, we know some things to look at and how to market those things. So that will help our recruitment program. But to answer the question is that we have so many sites available, it doesn't make sense to build an industrial park when we have places like Halliburton, for an example, which is a site with all the utilities and rail that we can use and promote for site selection. So it doesn't, until those sites are full. Sweetwater County is very unique compared to other parts of the state, that we have a lot of industrial buildings that are available and vacant. So really, it doesn't make a lot of sense right now to put all this infrastructure out and do that when we have existing sites. So that's the reason. I think it's always out there, but that I can't even imagine what that price tag with the inflation, because those were all done prior. Because what was it, 40 million? I can't even imagine what that would be right now to take the water out there. So yeah, that's kind of the status of things right now. But just so you know, Kayla will be working in the next 2 or 3 months. They will actually be coming out also to to view those sites, but what we will be presenting to them and Kayla will be presenting to them is existing sites.
Makes sense.
All right, yeah. Speaking of the subdivision regs, Casey and I have been going through those with Megan and more staff, engineering and that. One thing that we have been doing with those subdivision regs is not duplicating what's in the zoning resolution. So
Yeah.
when the zoning resolution says the setback is this, we're not doing it in the subdivision regs too. It's more referring back to the zoning resolution. So that way, if one changes, you don't have to change both.
Yeah.
Or they conflict each other.
Yeah.
And there's confusion, so.
One thing, just within the Wyoming Legislative Committee work, there's a regulatory reduction task force that is starting to focus on some different changes. Kind of, if you're kind of a legislative nerd and like to follow those committee and task force meetings, you can pull up their calendar. I usually pull those up, and WildPass is very involved with this, but there were concerns, especially with the county, as far as what they're trying to do is address the housing issue, and minimum lot sizes are an issue for affordability. And so what you're seeing is some potential changes in limiting, especially the cities. I don't think that's wise in the county because of wells and septics and such, where you need separations and such. But in the cities, there is some focus on removing that. I'm a home rule person and local control, but just wanted to make you aware that there were looks at potentially limiting cities for even regulating lot sizes. So to reduce those lot sizes down to make them more affordable. I know that a lot of cities, when you talk to WAM, Wyoming Association of Municipalities, that they're all looking at making, whether, and it's hard because you can't make a broad brush across the state of Wyoming and say, well, this works for everybody, and where it's really one community that is the issue and not the other 22 counties. It's one county. Let's let those locals control that. But minimum lot size is an issue. And that's why, I think at the county, we've done a good thing by bringing those down, and we'll see what happens with that.
All right. Anything else from the commission?
Good meeting.
Excellent.
So, yeah, having gone through the agenda and no further business, we'll adjourn. It is 11:21.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.